Beneath the mountain peaks, 5 armies were stationed. Above them, 5 surging waves of battle intent clashed distinctly, each one radiating its own powerful energy. At this moment, all 5 armies were in a state of rest, so their battle intent appeared less aggressive, seeming much calmer and more subdued. However, Chen, who understood battle intent deeply, knew that this apparent calmness was just a surface illusion. The essence of battle intent lies in the fusion of a warrior's spiritual power and will. As long as these warriors are filled with fighting spirit, that battle intent will immediately flare up in response to their will, becoming aggressive and fierce. Chen's dark eyes focused on the 5 distinct waves of battle intent. His expression was contemplative. The battle intent of the 9 Nether's guard was now under his perfect control. However, he could feel that, as his own power grew, the battle intent formed by the 9 Nether's guard was starting to feel inadequate. But such a trained army is not something that can be cultivated overnight. Each soldier requires a considerable amount of time to merge their spiritual power. Only when their spiritual energy and will are in perfect harmony can they truly fuse their battle intent. Otherwise, they are merely a disorganized mob, and their battle intent will lack any real power. 1,000 untrained soldiers are no match for 1,000 warriors whose battle intent has been merged. The latter would easily crush the former. Thus, even though Chen felt the 9 Nether's guard's battle intent no longer satisfied him, there was little he could do about it. For a battle formation master, without a large and elite army to support them, it would be like trying to cook without ingredients. The power of a battle formation master comes from the army. However, at this moment, Chen had an excellent opportunity to try something new, namely, the 4 other armies before him, the Mountain-Splitting Legion of Mountain-Splitting Hall, the Blood Eagle Guard of Bloodhawk Hall, the Spirit Sword Servants of Spirit Sword Mountain, and the Hong Army of Hongya Cavern. If he could use his own strength to resonate with these 4 armies, it would mean he could potentially control their battle intent as well. And if he succeeded, Chen's power would reach an incredible level. With the battle intent of the 9 Nether's guard alone, he could already rival a 6th grade supreme like Suba. If he could further harness the battle intent of the other 4 armies, even a 7th grade supreme would pose no threat to him. Of course, Chen was not foolish. He understood that with his current power, he was likely not strong enough to control the overwhelming battle intent of 5 elite armies. Unless he truly became a battle formation master, the sheer magnitude of such battle intent would overwhelm him, breaking his will. You can't become strong in an instant. This is something that must be achieved step by step. However, although control was currently impossible, if he could at least resonate with the battle intent, it would show that he had the potential to do so. Perhaps then, he would be a step closer to becoming that mysterious battle formation master. That said, meddling in the affairs of these royal armies might be considered overstepping, but Chen had his ways of dealing with any problems that might arise afterward. With this thought in mind, Chen couldn't help but take a deep breath of the cold air. Without hesitation, he closed his eyes slowly, and his consciousness spread out like ripples across the dark night sky. Though his sight was obscured, his spiritual perception was vast. In his awareness, 5 vast oceans of battle intent rippled quietly around the mountain. Faintly, it seemed as though countless battle intents were roaring, shaking the space itself. Among the 5 oceans, one felt particularly familiar to Chen. This was the battle intent of the 9 Nether's guard. The other 4, however, were distinct and fiercely entrenched, like dragons and tigers guarding their territories. Chen hesitated slightly, then extended his mind toward the 4 surging waves of battle intent. As he reached out, he tested the waters. Bang! As soon as Chen's consciousness touched the 4 waves of battle intent, it was forcefully repelled. Moreover, a subconscious resistance and attack from the battle intent seemed to reverberate, shaking his mind and causing some turbulence. The first attempt ended in failure. Chen furrowed his brow. The battle intents were extremely sensitive, rejecting any foreign thoughts. If Chen's intentions had carried any aggression, the 4 waves of battle intent would have likely launched an immediate counterattack. Chen pondered for a long while, his tightly furrowed brow gradually relaxing. After all, he was quite familiar with battle will. He knew that attempting to control it through brute force would be utterly futile. Gradually, Chen calmed his fluctuating state of mind, waiting until his heart became as still as water before once again extending his spirit. This time, he didn't deliberately try to engage with the 4 immense battle wills but allowed his spirit to diffuse through the night sky, spreading out like ripples on water, until it eventually touched the 4 battle wills once more. The moment of contact, Chen's body trembled violently, and his mind was suddenly overwhelmed with the deafening roars of countless battles. The violent battle will threatening to seize control of his consciousness. However, these battle will roars didn't obstruct Mu Chen much. After all, his understanding of battle will was far from that of a novice, so he immediately steadied his mind and allowed the battle will to bombard him. After a while, the roars gradually weakened and eventually dissipated completely. As the roars faded, Mu Chen's extended spirit, now like a fish swimming through a stream, entered the vast ocean of battle will. His thoughts finally merged into the four vast battle wills. It felt as though he had entered a series of raging volcanoes. Each of the four battle wills was ferocious in its own right, and each one carried its own unique attributes. For instance, the Blood Eagle Guards was heavy with bloodlust, the Mountain-Splitting Legions was steeped in slaughter, the Spirit Sword Armies was sharp and piercing, and the Hong Armies was weightier and more substantial. These attributes reflected the long-standing characteristics of each army, or, in some sense, their preferred ways of fighting. Mu Chen's spirit merged into the chaotic ocean of battle will. The continuous reverberations of that wild battle will assaulted him, but if this were a normal person, they would have been driven mad by it, unable to stay conscious. Fortunately, Mu Chen was not an ordinary person. After merging into the four immense battle wills, Mu Chen didn't rush to force a resonance with them. Instead, he allowed his spirit to float aimlessly, like a river fish swimming within the vast ocean of battle will. He tried to blend in as much as possible. Crucially, Mu Chen didn't intentionally hide his spirit's presence. So when his spirit rippled through the four battle wills, it was immediately noticed by them. These battle wills came from the soldiers of the four armies. So when they sensed the intrusion of Mu Chen's spirit, countless soldiers under the mountains and within the four armies opened their eyes in shock, their expressions filled with astonishment. Normally, if they detected such an unfamiliar presence, they would immediately launch an attack to eliminate the invader. But now, the intruder was Mu Chen. For these past days, Mu Chen had been leading the Nine Nether's guard alongside them, and they had greatly admired the strength he had shown when refining battle spirit for the Nine Nether's guard. So when they sensed Mu Chen's spirit, they didn't react with immediate hostility. Instead, they hesitated for a moment, and upon realizing that Mu Chen didn't seem to be taking any aggressive actions, they accepted his presence. After all, Mu Chen was a fellow member of the Great Luo Heaven Domain, their ally. However, while the ordinary soldiers accepted this, there were still many commanders under the four kings who were part of the higher ranks of the four armies. Naturally, they couldn't treat this as nothing. After some hesitation, they reported the situation to their highest commander, the four kings. Whoosh! Whoosh! Upon receiving the news, the four kings, led by Mountain-Splitting King, swiftly ascended into the sky, their faces filled with astonishment as they gazed at the mountain peak. At the same time, Nine Nether appeared in the sky. Upon seeing her, the four kings turned to her and asked, "Nine Nether King, what is Mu King doing?" Although the four kings remained relatively polite, Nine Nether could sense their confusion. Nine Nether let out a bitter laugh. Just as she was about to say something, a thought spread across the night sky. Mu Chen's voice echoed beneath the night sky. Use the four kings' army for cultivation. If successful, it might help the four armies comprehend the battle spirit. Mu Chen's gentle voice rang out, causing the eyes of the four kings to shine brightly, and a radiant smile instantly appeared on their faces. Higi, if Mu King is interested, feel free to take them. Even Hongya King, usually quiet, couldn't help but laugh. Over the past days of joint operations, they had witnessed the power of battle spirit on an army. They were envious, but their own forces lacked someone like Mu Chen, so all they could do was fret. However, after hearing Mu Chen's words, even with their composure, the four kings couldn't help but feel their eyelids twitch. If not for the concern of upsetting others, they probably would have eagerly offered their army to Mu Chen, as long as he could forge the battle spirit. Let him do whatever he wanted. Nine Nether, observing the four kings, who were almost eager to hand over their armies to Mu Chen, couldn't help but curl her lips into a smile. However, her brows soon furrowed as she looked at the figure atop the mountain. But this guy is boasting a bit too much. The battle spirit? It's not so easy to forge. After dismissing Mountain-Splitting King and the four kings, Mu Chen's thoughts once again merged into the four vast seas of battle intent. Perhaps due to the approval from the four kings, the soldiers of the four armies had removed all their guard against Mu Chen, and the swirling thoughts within the battle intent ocean began to accept his somewhat foreign presence. Mu Chen's mind quietly merged in. He didn't disturb the flow of the army's battle intent. Instead, He acted as an observer, silently flowing with the tide. To resonate with battle intent, one must first achieve integration with it. In this state of flowing with the tide, Mu Chen's state of mind grew calmer. The countless battle roars that had been ringing in his mind from the battle intent ocean gradually began to fade, until they completely dissipated. The entire world seemed to grow silent at that moment. From the perspective of those watching from the outside, Mu Chen's aura appeared to be completely retracted. Mountain-splitting king and the four kings looked at their respective armies, seemingly noticing that the previously surging battle intent had quieted down. They didn't fully understand the reason for this change, but their eyes grew brighter. This change at least indicated that Mu Chen seemed to possess extraordinary talent in the realm of battle intent. Perhaps Mu Chen could truly help their armies forge the battle spirit. They weren't worried that Mu Chen would do anything to harm their armies. After all, they were all from the great Luo Heaven domain, and if Mu Chen were to do something like that, the domain would not tolerate him. Moreover, their recent interactions had allowed them to understand Mu Chen better. With his personality, he would never resort to such despicable acts. Time slowly passed under the night sky. After about 3 hours, Mu Chen's thoughts had fully integrated into the sea of battle intent formed by the four armies, as if he had transformed into an ordinary soldier's mindset. He could sense that the battle intent of these four armies no longer rejected him. However, mere acceptance was not enough. Do you wish to forge the battle spirit and become stronger? Mu Chen's thoughts spread through the sea of battle intent, reaching every soldier. Buzz. At that moment, the sea of battle intent from the four armies suddenly stirred. The soldiers of the four armies immediately responded with the strongest reactions, filled with near-maniacal excitement. For every trained army, the most coveted goal was to forge the battle spirit. Only then would an army possess a soul. Otherwise, it would remain like a group of scattered soldiers, unable to achieve greatness. Mu Chen smiled faintly as he listened to the intense responses. With such strong expectations from them, it seemed the resonance would be much easier to achieve next. Mountain-splitting king and the others also felt the sudden surge in battle intent from their armies and immediately rubbed their hands together excitedly. 4 of you. Since this is my first time attempting this, I am unable to help all 4 armies forge the battle spirit at once. However, the next words that Mu Chen transmitted into their ears caused the faces of the mountain-splitting king and the other 2 to stiffen, while the Blood Eagle King grinned, provoking a fierce glare from the 3 of them. They hadn't expected that the Blood Eagle Hall would be the first to attempt it. Although they hadn't fully expected Mu Chen to succeed, as refining battle intent was no simple task, what if it actually worked? Thinking of how even the Blood Eagle Guard might be able to refine their battle spirit if successful, the 3 of them couldn't help but curl their lips in dissatisfaction. At this moment, Mu Chen didn't pay attention to what the mountain-splitting king and the others were thinking because he knew very well that with his current abilities, trying to help 4 armies refine their battle intent at once would probably lead to his mind being overwhelmed by the violent surge of battle intent. So, he had to do it one by one, and now the Blood Eagle Guard, with the smallest number of troops, was clearly the best test target. With this in mind, Mu Chen swiftly withdrew his presence from the other 3 armies and focused entirely on the Blood Eagle Guard's battle intent. Upon his presence, the Blood Eagle Guard immediately erupted with the warmest welcome, allowing his consciousness to quickly merge with theirs. Release all your battle intent. Mu Chen's voice echoed in the minds of every soldier. Boom. As Mu Chen's command fell, the Blood Eagle Guard simultaneously roared. Their overwhelming battle intent erupted like a sea of blood, howling through the heavens and earth, filled with a bloodthirsty aura. Mu Chen's consciousness felt as if it was in a sea of corpses and blood, the entire world turning blood red. The battle intent of the Blood Eagle Guard was indeed powerful, but compared to the 9 Nether Guard, it was still somewhat lacking. Therefore, Mu Chen's consciousness remained calm, gradually sinking deeper until it reached the very core of the blood sea of battle intent. The blood sea of battle intent surged, endless bloodthirst flooding Mu Chen's mind, and countless scenes of brutal battles flashed through his heart. These were the bloody fights the Blood Eagle Guard had once experienced. However, from Mu Chen's perspective, the Blood Eagle Guard's battle intent still wasn't refined enough. To be precise, it was because the Blood Eagle Guard had never had a true leader who could command the overall situation. Instead, It had been governed by several leaders working together, and while this division of leadership could expand the control, there were still subtle differences between them. Therefore, it was difficult for them to consolidate all their battle intent into a unified force. To refine battle intent, a single, undisputed leader was necessary, just like how Chen commanded the 9 Nether Guard. However, in order to command the Blood Eagle Guard's battle intent, Chen would need the recognition of every soldier in the Blood Eagle Guard. "Give me your battle intent." Chen's voice rapidly spread through the sea of battle intent. His words caused ripples within the Blood Eagle Guard. After all, they were from the Blood Eagle Hall, and battle intent was their greatest asset. It was always a taboo for an army to hand over control of their battle intent to a stranger. Soon, the commotion within the Blood Eagle Guard reached the ears of the Blood Eagle King, who rolled his eyes and shouted angrily, "Do as King says." With the Blood Eagle King's roar, the Blood Eagle Guard immediately stopped hesitating. Their powerful battle intent surged, and Chen's consciousness instantly spread, merging completely with the fierce battle intent. A strong, bloodthirsty aura flooded into Chen's mind. The intensity of this aura was so strong that any ordinary warrior would likely be driven mad and become a killing machine. But for Chen, it had no effect. He simply ignored the overwhelming bloodthirsty aura. With a mental command, the blood sea of battle intent seemed to come alive, as if a violent wind were sweeping through it. Rays of crimson battle intent pillars suddenly erupted from the blood sea, the bloodthirsty aura filling the heavens and earth. Chen's mind was calm as he completely immersed himself in the blood sea of battle intent, feeling the bloodthirst, experiencing the countless life or death struggles the Blood Eagle Guard had once fought through. All the soldiers of the Blood Eagle Guard now looked solemn. Their eyes glinted with sharpness, and in that moment, they felt as if an invisible hand was forcibly gathering their battle intent together. This hand seemed incredibly vast and powerful, capable of unleashing their strength to the extreme. They had never felt such a powerful will before, one that no commander of the Blood Eagle Hall could ever reach. At this moment, every Blood Eagle Guard soldier discarded all distractions, and that sense of peace allowed them to focus entirely on unleashing their battle intent. The steady, reassuring hand above them would gather their battle intent and condense it into the most powerful force. Buzz. The sea of blood battle intent surged wildly, and the Blood Eagle King watched this scene in awe. He could clearly feel that the battle intent of the Blood Eagle Guards was rapidly skyrocketing. This was something no commander had ever achieved when leading the Blood Eagle Guards before. This was the true genius of battle intent. Only in the hands of such a battle intent genius could an armies will become indestructible. The Blood Eagle King sighed lightly, his gaze filled with envy as he looked at 9 Nether. Laughing wryly, "You really brought back an extraordinary person." 9 Nether smiled faintly, a trace of pride on her cold, beautiful face. When Chen first arrived in the Great Luo Heaven Domain, no one probably had any faith in him, but the final outcome made everyone realize just how wrong they were. The mountain-splitting king and the others watched, eyes wide, as countless crimson pillars of battle intent collided in the blood-red sea, the overwhelming battle intent causing the very space to ripple. With their sharp perception, they could sense that deep within the wild, surging battle intent, something seemed to be taking shape. The bloodlight filled the heavens and earth. Screech. Suddenly, a piercing eagle's cry rang through the sky. The Blood Eagle King trembled, his palms clenched tightly, his face filled with excitement. The mountain-splitting king, Spirit Sword King, and Cliff King's eyes also glinted with intensity. All the soldiers from the various armies looked up, their eyes fixed on the place where the bloodlight and battle intent were roiling. There, the bloodlight spread, and a massive, blood-red light eagle slowly spread its 1,000-foot wings. Then, with a mighty flap of those wings, an astonishing battle intent swept across the heavens and earth. That blood-red light eagle was none other than the battle spirit of the Blood Eagle Guards. The mountain-splitting king and the others gasped, exchanging stunned and elated looks. Chen had actually helped the Blood Eagle Hall condense its battle spirit. Screech. The massive Blood Eagle hovered above the Blood Eagle Guards, its wings flapping as the overwhelming battle intent spread out. The very space around them trembled violently, and everyone could clearly feel that the Blood Eagle Guard's battle intent had grown far stronger than before. This was the power of the battle spirit. The Blood Eagle King looked up, staring at the massive Blood Eagle. After a long pause, his body trembled uncontrollably as uncontrollable joy surged across his usually somber face. After all these years of cultivating the Blood Eagle Guards, he had finally witnessed the day when they could condense their battle spirit. The mountain-splitting king and the other two kings looked on with envy, fully aware of the earth-shattering changes that would come once an army condensed its battle spirit. Though the Blood Eagle Guards had previously suffered heavy losses when the Celestial Crocodile army ambushed them, with nearly half their forces wiped out, now that their battle spirit had been formed, their combat power had surpassed their peak levels from before. Such a transformation made the mountain-splitting king and the others burn with desire. Their own armies, particularly the Mountain-Splitting Legion under the Mountain-Splitting King's command, were even stronger than the Blood Eagle Guards in terms of momentum. The Mountain-Splitting Legion alone numbered over 10,000, and if they too could condense their battle spirit, their combat power would be truly terrifying. Thinking of this, the three kings couldn't help but turn their eager gazes toward the distant mountain peak, where a figure sat silently. That figure, though thin in the night, exuded a sense of power. Even someone like the Mountain-Splitting King dared not underestimate him at this moment. A person who could help other armies condense their battle spirits undoubtedly had terrifying potential. Chen, indeed, was a rare battle-intent genius. As their fiery gazes lingered on him, Chen on the mountain peak suddenly stood up. As long as he is willing, he can immediately condense the battle spirit of the Nine Nether's Guard as well. In this way, the battle will of both armies would be under his control. Such power is certainly much stronger than before. However, this attempt at least made Chen understand that he indeed possesses the ability to control the battle will of other armies. Chen lightly waved his sleeve, and the enormous battle spirit above the Blood Eagle Guard turned into countless streaks of blood-colored light that fell, finally merging into the battle will ocean formed by the Blood Eagle Guard. He moved and appeared in front of Blood Eagle King and Mountain-Splitting King. When the others saw this, they quickly cupped their fists in greeting, looking more respectful than usual. Before they could speak, Chen looked at Blood Eagle King and said, "Blood Eagle King, don't rush to thank me yet, because to be precise, the Blood Eagle Guard has not truly condensed the battle spirit." Blood Eagle King and the others froze for a moment, looking at Chen with confusion. Chen gave a wry smile and explained, "Previously, under my intervention, the Blood Eagle Guard did indeed condense a battle spirit, but the condition was that I was in control. Once I withdraw my thoughts, the Blood Eagle Guard will still be unable to sustain the battle spirit on its own." The smile on Blood Eagle King's face instantly froze. After a while, he gave a wry smile and thought, Chen is not the commander of the Blood Eagle Guard, so he can't follow the Blood Eagle Guard at all times. And if it were really like that, then whose army would the Blood Eagle Guard be? It's a tricky situation. As for finding someone with the same abilities as Chen, that was practically impossible for Blood Eagle King. Such a person would never settle in a small force like the Blood Eagle Hall. Just as Blood Eagle King and the others were feeling disappointed, Chen smiled again and said, "However, although you cannot rely on your own strength to maintain the true battle spirit, you can indeed condense a pseudo-battle spirit with your own power." Pseudo-battle spirit? Blood Eagle King and the others exchanged glances, wondering what this was about. Can a battle spirit even have a genuine or fake distinction? Chen smiled and said, "What I did earlier wasn't completely ineffective. I've sealed the mark of the battle spirit in the minds of all the members of the Blood Eagle Guard. So next time, as long as they activate their battle will, they will trigger that mark and condense the battle spirit. However, this is not a battle spirit that was condensed by the Blood Eagle Guard on its own. Therefore, it will naturally be weaker, so I call it the pseudo-battle spirit." Blood Eagle King and the others were stunned. It was probably the first time they heard that the battle spirit could be condensed with external help. However, what Chen said did put them at ease. Regardless of whether the battle spirit was real or fake, as long as it was usable, they were not expecting to jump straight to the top. Also, the mark sealed cannot be used indefinitely. Once the energy of the mark is depleted, it will automatically dissipate. At that point, it will need to be replenished, Chen shrugged and said. Cold sweat ran down Blood Eagle King and the others. So, this thing even needs to be recharged. It seems that in order to keep the battle spirit mark in use for the long term, they really can't afford to offend Chen, their benefactor. Seeing their expressions, Chen scratched his head and said, "This thing does have its drawbacks. If you guys are not satisfied, then forget it." "No way." Mountain Splitting King, Spirit Sword King, and Cliff King almost shouted in unison. As soon as the words were out of their mouths, they exchanged an awkward glance. Mountain Splitting King let out a dry laugh and said, King is too modest. Although this pseudo-battle spirit is not as miraculous as the true battle spirit, I'm afraid there's no army that wouldn't want such a treasure. So, we'll need Mu King's help for our 3 armies as well. This kindness will be remembered. If Mu King ever needs anything, feel free to ask, said Cliff King, who was usually silent, while cupping his fists. Mu Chen quickly waved his hands and said, "We are all from the great Luo Heaven domain, and helping each other is only natural. Since you 3 are willing, I will do my best in the next couple of days to help the other 3 armies condense their own battle spirits as well." Mu Chen now understood that being able to resonate with other armies meant that, at a critical moment, he could also control the battle will of those armies. Of course, this had to be approved by the 4 kings first, and only then would the warriors of these 4 armies acknowledge him and entrust their battle will to him. After all, no matter what, these armies were not the 9 Nether's guard, nor were they his to command. Upon hearing this, Mountain-Splitting King and the others froze for a moment, exchanged glances, then smiled and said, "No problem. Besides, I think if it ever comes to that, it means we're all facing a dangerous situation. If that time comes, as long as Mu King has the ability, our armies are at your disposal." They answered readily, as they understood that Mu Chen could at most borrow their armies, but could never claim them for his own. After all, these armies were painstakingly built by them, and their warriors only obeyed their orders. As long as they didn't give the nod, even if Mu Chen had the highest battle will talent, he could not fool them into controlling the entire army. Thus, handing the army over to Mu Chen in such a situation was within their tolerance. They figured it would be like rewarding Mu Chen for helping them refine the pseudo battle will spirit. Mu Chen smiled and nodded when he saw their agreement. He had no ulterior motives. He simply wanted to be able to control other armies at a critical moment to enhance their combat power. Since learning that other top forces also had battle will geniuses capable of refining the battle will spirits, Mu Chen had grown more cautious. The 9 Nether's Guard, after all, had only developed rapidly this year, and in terms of scale, it was still insufficient. Generally speaking, the strength of the refined battle will spirit was largely dependent on the size of the armies involved. However, at the moment, the 9 Nether's Guard clearly had no chance of expanding its forces, and such armies couldn't be raised overnight. Therefore, Mu Chen had no choice but to set his sights on the elite armies under the other kings. Though controlling other armies would be more difficult and troublesome, Mu Chen had no better options. In this perilous fallen battlefield, everything depended on himself. We've slowed down the pace of exploring the ruins these past few days. Once I have refined the battle will spirits of the other 3 armies, we will strike in full force, Mu Chen said as he looked at the others. Mountain-Splitting King nodded, then paused before continuing. I received some intelligence in the past 2 days, related to the battle will genius from Xiantian Palace. Mu Chen's eyes narrowed upon hearing this. That guy's recent reputation in the fallen battlefield is quite vicious. Any force that encounters him is usually wiped out, with less than 1 in 10 escaping. Mountain-Splitting King turned his gaze to Mu Chen and said, "According to our intelligence, this guy seems to be looking for your whereabouts." Xiantian Palace. Mu Chen's eyes remained calm as he nodded. He had deep grudges with Xiantian Palace. Since that person was from Xiantian Palace, it was no surprise they would come after him. Also, news has come from Divine Hall. The battle will genius there has defeated several first-rate forces in the past few days. From my feeling, she's likely after you as well. Mu Chen frowned slightly. Now, both battle will geniuses were targeting him, which was indeed troublesome. But Mu Chen let out a light breath and smiled, his voice calm but filled with confidence, drawing attention. If they're really after me, then let them come. When the time comes, I don't mind showing them what it's like to hit a brick wall. Over the years, he had witnessed countless geniuses, but he had never been afraid. It was the same in the past, and it would be the same in the future. Mu Chen spent 2 days refining the so-called pseudo battle will spirits for the 3 armies under Mountain-Splitting King and the others. The cost of this, however, was that he was utterly weakened for an entire day. Refining the battle will spirit was not a drain on spiritual energy, but rather a fatigue of the will. To control the will of tens of thousands of people required an exceptionally strong will, which was one of the main reasons many powerful individuals, despite their strength, could not control battle will. Refining the battle will for 4 armies and sealing the marks into the minds of all the warriors was no easy task. The next day, once Mu Chen had recovered, the 4 kings of the Mountain-Splitting Legion rushed over to express their gratitude. Their polite demeanor was unprecedented. The previous day, when Mu Chun had been weakened, they had already tested the power of the pseudo battle intent spirit. While it was not as strong as the true battle intent spirit, it still significantly boosted their army's combat effectiveness. Having personally experienced the benefits, they now understood more clearly how important Mu Chun was. A benefactor like him had to be courted. Otherwise, once the battle intent mark was depleted, their army would revert to its original state. The Nine Nether, who was standing beside Mu Chun, couldn't help but feel amused and somewhat sentimental upon seeing the mountain-splitting king and the others acting this way. Back when she had been crowned king in the Great Luo Heaven Domain, although the mountain-splitting king and the others hadn't targeted her like the Blood Eagle King, they had undoubtedly looked down on her. After all, back then, with her age, strength, and experience, it had been difficult for the Nine Nether to even attain kingship. But now, the Nine Nether was no longer the same. Her strength was no less than that of the various kings, though she knew that this would only prevent the proud mountain-splitting king and the others from underestimating her. As for them treating her with the respect and courtesy she deserved, that still seemed unlikely. Yet now, even someone as proud as the mountain-splitting king treated them with politeness, not daring to offend them. This change was all due to Mu Chun. Though the young man might not have overwhelming power, he had used his own means to make even powerful figures like the mountain-splitting king lower themselves to form an alliance. There's no need to be so polite. We are all from the Great Luo Heaven Domain. In this grand hunting war, we naturally need to support one another. Mu Chun responded amicably to the mountain-splitting king's politeness. Seeing how calm and gracious Mu Chun was, without any arrogance despite possessing the important battle intent mark, the four kings felt more at ease, and their expressions became even friendlier. Hiki, Mu King, we've slowed down the pace of exploring the ruins these days. Should we proceed with full force now? The mountain-splitting king asked with a smile, clearly awaiting Mu Chun's decision. Mu Chun pondered for a moment and then asked, how is the situation in the fallen battlefield? For the past few days, all of his focus had been on refining the battle intent spirit, so he hadn't been paying attention to the developments in the fallen battlefield. It's becoming more intense, the mountain-splitting king replied seriously. We are now heading deeper into the fallen battlefield. Typically, the further you go, the more powerful the forces you'll encounter. So, if war breaks out, it will certainly be a large-scale battle. According to what we know, more than 100 forces have already been wiped out in the past few days, including several first-rate forces. Mu Chen's eyes narrowed slightly. First-rate forces in the northern domain were already considered powerful, and yet they had been destroyed. He couldn't imagine how brutal the conflict must have been. Do we have any news about the other forces from the Great Luo Heaven Domain? Mu Chen asked. The fallen battlefield is too vast, and intelligence gathering is limited, so we don't know the situation of the other forces at the moment, said the Spirit Sword King, shaking his head. Mu Chen nodded and said, the fallen source pills we have may not be enough. Although, with the help of the spirit-seeking compass, they had over 10,000 fallen source pills, it was said that just a single layer of the Earth's Supreme Treasure's seal could require tens of thousands or more of these pills. Clearly, their current stock was far from enough. At this point, the fallen source pills we can refine from the third-grade ruins are too few. We need to find higher-grade ruins, Nine Nether said with a frown. Typically, a third-grade ruin could produce several hundred fallen source pills. While this was a significant amount in the beginning, it no longer felt sufficient now. Additionally, with so many armies gathered together, dividing up the pills meant each army would receive even fewer. Though they could use the spirit-seeking compass to compensate for this, the value of third-grade ruins was still too low. The relics and treasures left behind in those ruins could not captivate the kings. Mu Chen wore a contemplative expression. Above the third-grade ruins, there were the second-grade ruins, and these second-grade ruins were indeed extraordinary. The last time they encountered one by chance, even though they teamed up, they still paid some price. However, the rewards were truly gratifying. Just a single ruin was worth the equivalent of 10 third-grade ruins. Not to mention the legacy items, just the fallen source pills they extracted alone numbered in the thousands. However, while second-grade ruins were rich in treasures, they were extremely difficult to find. Even when Mu Chen and the others used the power of the spirit-seeking compass, they only managed to locate one. Right now, in the fallen battlefield, as soon as word of a second-grade ruin spread, countless forces would surely rush to it. As for higher-level ruins, I don't know if you've heard the rumors going around these past couple of days, said Cliff King, who had been silent until now. Oh. The mountain-splitting king and the others were taken aback and then frowned. Are you referring to the death ruins that have been spreading widely these past few days? Death ruins. Chen was also stunned, clearly unaware of what that was. Recently, in the northwest direction of the fallen battlefield, it's said that a ruin has been discovered. It's been reported that everyone who entered has never returned, so some are calling it the death ruins, explained Nine Nether. Now, the news of these death ruins has spread, and many top-tier forces are showing great interest in it. According to their speculations, this so-called death ruins is likely to be a first-grade ruin. A first-grade ruin? Chen's pupil shrank, and he couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement. That was second only to the Earth's supreme treasure. Even with the spirit-seeking compass's help, he hadn't found a single first-grade ruin. This showed just how deeply hidden such ruins could be. The rumors are circulating, but we're not sure if it really is a first-grade ruin. After all, in a cursed place like the fallen battlefield, anything can happen. No one knows what they might encounter after venturing in. But the mountain-splitting king's voice faltered for a moment, his eyes fixed on Chen. It's said that there are signs of a battle formation master's fall within the death ruins. A battle formation master. Chen's expression changed drastically. He looked at the mountain-splitting king with burning eyes. A battle formation master? That legendary existence was rare in today's world, so rare that Chen didn't even know how one could officially become a battle formation master. Even though he could control battle will, he was still at the most basic level, relying on trial and error to train. Nine Nether seemed to have anticipated Chen's reaction. It said that many army skeletons have been found inside. From this, it speculated that the death ruins might be the work of a battle formation master. Chen slowly calmed his restless emotions. After a while, he nodded lightly. The death ruins were indeed very tempting, but the danger within must be unimaginable. So, for the first time, even he, who was usually decisive, couldn't help but hesitate. If it were just the Nine Nether Palace's forces, Chen would naturally want to investigate, especially since the allure of a battle formation master was so great. But now, with the mountain-splitting king and the others present, he wasn't sure if they were willing to take such a great risk for something as uncertain as a rumor. Although they hadn't seen the death ruins themselves, it was clear that with such a fearsome reputation, it couldn't be a good place. If you're interested in those death ruins, you'd better act quickly. It's said that the two battle-will geniuses from the Xun'er Palace and the Divine Hall are on their way there. If I'm not mistaken, they're probably also after the battle formation master's legacy, Nine Nether said with a slight smile, her voice making Chen's heart stir with desire. If King is interested, we'll gladly accompany you. After all four of our armies possess the battle spirit. I believe we should be able to protect ourselves, no matter how dangerous the death ruins may be, said the mountain-splitting king with a knowing look. The four of them exchanged glances and smiled. And we've never experienced the full power of a first-grade ruin. Chen sighed in relief upon hearing this. If it were just the Nine Nether Palace venturing out alone, it would have been difficult to stand strong and far too dangerous. But with the support of the mountain-splitting king and his forces, the safety factor would increase significantly. This was likely thanks to the favor he had previously done for the mountain-splitting king's army, helping them forge their battle spirit. Otherwise, the mountain-splitting king and his men might not have been so willing to wade into unknown, murky waters. However, no matter what, since the mountain-splitting king had agreed, they could now focus their attention on the death ruins. Chen's hand slowly clenched into a fist, and deep in his black eyes, a fiery passion surged. A battle formation master, he was eagerly looking forward to it.